Story time with Stephanie Story.
I am art historical novelist Stephanie Storey. Welcome to my show, Story Time, where I get to talk to other writers about their passions and their processes. I am so excited about today because my guest is from my proverbial neck of the woods, the Hollywood. She worked on sitcoms, including with my very own husband, and her husband worked on shows with my husband. So it's a family affair here today. So she has written for television shows like Roseanne and Major Dad. And as a girl who grew up on the Sweet Valley High books, Sweet Valley High, come on, the television series. But anyway, she's out with her debut novel. It is called After Happily Ever After. It just came out this spring. Welcome to the show, Leslie Rasmussen.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're here because I love talking about the differences between publishing and Hollywood because it is so wildly different. So we will get to that. But before that, so I keep in my head calling this book a rom-com, which may not exactly be right because they're like heavier themes than that. Like there's some real meat to it, but I have to say it is very funny. Even though it has like real actual meat to it. So from the look on your face, you probably do not describe it as a rom-com, but tell my viewers at home a little bit about your book and how you describe it.
Well, I like the rom-com theme, but because it does have some comedy in it, obviously, because of my background. But it's also got some really dramatic themes in it because it's got a whole situation with a woman whose parents are getting older, like a lot of us have, being the sandwich generation, and she's dealing with her father, who has always been her rock in life, and he's got some issues. So there's some sad stuff in the book too. But I tried, just like life, I wanted to make it funny at certain times and then heartfelt at other times. So that's kind of what it is. And it's about a woman's journey to rediscover herself after she gave up this high-powered job that she loved. And she can't really figure out how to go back to it after her only daughter is going to go off to college. And she has a husband who's been kind of distracted, and he has a secret, and she doesn't really know what's going on with him. She's dealing with her parents, and everything sort of comes to a head at the same time. So her anxiety makes her make some decisions that are not decisions she would normally ever make, because she's just in this headspace of being kind of all over the place. And she goes for some things that she thinks will be more exciting in her life because she just needs something. And it doesn't turn out the way she wants it to, or the way she thinks it will.
Well, of course not, because it's a novel and it's a story, and we got to keep the people turning the pages.
Exactly.
But it was also there's a lot of it that's about, she's in her 40s.
Mm-hmm.
She's dealing with the fact that she's getting older, as a lot of us are. Where these things, the getting older, the dealing with parents, the having your kid go off to college, were these things that you drew off of from your real life? Like, were they things you had all struggled with? Or were there things that you, a lot of it was totally imaginary? How much of it's real?
Well, for me, I had written this, it was a nonfiction idea that I was going to do. And I had interviewed a ton of women. At the time, my kids they were like getting older, and I was talking to a lot of moms, and they were all in my position where it was like, okay, now do we want to do something? What do we want to do? And so I decided to do a nonfiction book, actually. And I interviewed a ton of people, all anonymously. I put out a survey online, and I got all this stuff. It was all women of all ages, even up into their 80s, starting at like 30s. And when I had all this information, I started to actually write chapters of it. And when I did, I realized there was so many similarities between these women, and so many similarities between the women that I was talking to in my kids' schools. So I started to think, you know what, this kind of could go into one person. I have a fiction background. So when I started to think about it, I thought, I'm going to write fiction, and I'm going to take all these things about some women's husbands, because the surveys were like, your partner, it was about long-term marriages or long-term partnerships, either way, because it didn't have to be straight. It was about how you deal with money, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with jealousy, all these kinds of things. So when I saw all that stuff, I thought, this is so many subjects that could actually be in a book. I added the stuff about the parents because I was sort of in that position. My father passed away 4 years ago, but he had issues, but not the same issues. And he never had dementia, but he had issues. And so I knew what that was like to have my mother be a caregiver and us going, they didn't live near me, but going in there to see him and all those kind of things. And the only real thing, I mean, of course, there's little pieces of me in there from my childhood. There's little things, not so much from my marriage or what's going on in my life now, but, you know, I fit in there because when my son went off to kindergarten, I was in that position where I couldn't go back to television because, as you know, the TV business has changed like crazy. And just in the 5 years I was gone, the Writers Guild didn't demand people do freelance scripts anymore. And it was just very difficult to get back in and with an agent. So I ended up going back to school and getting a master's in nutrition. And from there, I opened my own business. And at the same time, I was writing essays for Huffington Post, a lot of personal essays. I wrote over 20 of them. And that was the thing that was making me excited, not necessarily the nutrition stuff. I was a nutritional counselor. I didn't love dealing with everybody and, you know, all their issues at the time because, you know, they don't, how many people want to go on a diet? Let's be honest, you know. So, you know, it was very good experience. I had my own business for 10 years, but as the time went on, I realized I want to go back to writing and it's probably not going to be television. So what am I going to do? And that's when I decided to write the nonfiction book, which turned into this book.
Okay, so I get how you went from, okay, I'm getting all of these people's stories and I'm pulling them together. I'm going to go write this nonfiction thing. Now I'm going to put them into a single person that feels a little bit more fictional. And I come from the sitcom background, so I'm used to like making stories up. This is going to be great. But what was like the final deciding factor that you were going to write a novel and you weren't, that it didn't turn into in your mind, well, I guess I'll write a spec screenplay and see what I can. I mean,
Right.
it could have turned into a lot of, could have turned into a blog. It could have turned into a lot of different things. A novel is not a quick or easy thing to write.
No.
What finally pushed you over the edge that it was going to be the object that is known as the novel?
Well, it's really funny because I started going to writing conferences and they were fiction people. They were a lot of novel people. And then I ended up through some weird thing, meeting two people, one of which was a writing coach. And she was starting this workshop. And this other woman, I met them both at a conference. And this other woman and I were like, we just really connected at this conference. So we decided to take this class together. And while I was there, it started out with, oh, write about a prompt or write about this or that. And all these prompts I wrote about started to look like, oh, wait, this seems like a character that I'm creating in all these prompts. And so then I started thinking, you know, I'm going to try to write a book. And the story came from different places, but it really came from all of these different ideas. And she does, it's not really a spoiler, but she does kind of have an emotional affair in the book. And that came from a friend of mine's marriage who, she's now divorced, but she had an emotional affair for 12 years. And I thought it was incredibly interesting. Nothing ever happened, nothing physical, another kiss, nothing. And I thought it was really interesting that she did that because her husband was traveling so much and not paying attention to her. And I kind of thought that was interesting that nothing happened with them other than she needed something. And so that's kind of where that got woven in. And my dad never got to read the book, unfortunately. It wasn't quite finished when he passed away. And it's dedicated to him. But the relationship that Maggie has with her father was very similar. That's the only thing that was really from my life, was my relationship with my father was very close and we were very connected. And so that was the only thing. But I purposely have two sons. I purposely did not put boys in it. That's why there's a teenage girl, because they cannot say it's them. You know, and so that's really how it happened.
But that's really sweet that you ended up being able to write a tribute to your dad
Yeah. And it became more of a tribute after he passed away. Then it was like, okay, I can put a little bit more in there from my childhood or whatever. I wish he got to read it because I know my father would have loved it. And my mother just loves the book. She's like my biggest fan. But it's still, I wish he read it because he was a writer too, and he would have loved it.
Okay, so when you started writing fiction, you come from sitcom world. People at home, a sitcom script is quite substantially shorter
Yes.
than a novel. I mean, word count, just structure. I mean, when you write a sitcom script, you're putting down, again, for people at home, you're putting down architecture that a set designer is going to fill in, and an actor is going to fill in, and a director is going to fill in, and other people are going to fill in that world. Yeah. When you sit down to write a novel, it is all on you. So
know that.
Did you know that? Were there surprises about that difference in process, or had you already sort of bridged that writing so many personal essays, or were there like surprises about what writing a novel really entailed?
Well, my personal essays were about my family and my kids, all that kind of stuff. So I knew that voice I really like. And that's why I did Maggie in the first person, because I wanted her to seem like my essays, which somebody's talking to you and she's telling you her story. So that part I got to. But you're right. I mean, writing a television script, first of all, none of them, I didn't create them. So somebody else created the characters. There were actors to act them out before I got there. So I knew, I worked on pilots and things, but still, you know who the actor is and you kind of can write to that voice. So that part of it was really intimidating. And in every sitcom that I did, you write an outline, and then you turn it in and you have to. When I started this, it was so intimidating to me that I did not write an outline. I kind of knew I knew the beginning. I didn't really know where it was going, but I just wanted to start writing because I thought if I don't start writing, I'm never gonna get this through. And I got about halfway through when I realized, oh my God, I don't have an outline and I don't really know what the arc is, which was a very easy thing to do in sitcoms because it's, 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes. And so I sat down at that point and wrote the outline. And it did change. The ending did change because I didn't quite know for sure what the ending was, but it got me over the hump of the middle and got me to the end. But it took a lot longer than I thought. I mean, besides I had 2 kids at home at the time, but it still took longer than I thought. I'm about 2/3 through my second book and it's not taking that long. I mean, that's moving much, much faster.
Okay, good. But you liked it enough where you're embarking on this journey again?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so first craft side, and then I'll ask you business side. Yeah. What about the craft side did you like enough? Because some people, I will admit, I've talked to some writers who are like, I don't know if I'm doing it again. I don't know if I can handle it. Like, it's too much. I can't do it. I don't want to, I'm going to go back and write short stories or something. What about the craft made you go, no, this is, I want to keep doing this. Like, I want to tackle it again. Is it because you have something else you want to say? Is it a new challenge? Is it like what is it about the craft?
It's a little of both. I did have something else I wanted to say. I love the writing part of it. I really enjoy, if I know what I'm doing, if I know where the book's going and I have an outline for this one, then sitting down to write, even if a chapter is going to be hard for me, I love the idea of like, where can this take place? Or they're going to have a fight. What's the funniest place for them to have a fight or whatever? I mean, and it's not, this next book is actually a little less comedic, but it still has comedy in it. I like writing banter, that's why there's more dialogue in this book than a lot of other people's books, because I know dialogue very well and I know how to write banter. And so that part I enjoy, but I really, really enjoy the writing part of it. I don't like the business part of it.
the business part of books.
Yes.
It's extraordinary, right?
Yes. Getting it published. And then once it gets published, I don't like the marketing part of it. I don't like self-promotion. I like to just sit and write. I don't want to do all of that stuff, but nobody knows what your book is unless you do them. I mean, I actually like podcasts, but I don't like all the Facebook ads and everything else that you're trying to do to get people to notice you.
It is. It was shocking to me when because I had, like you, I'd been in Hollywood forever. And that's a very different look. That's also a business, that there's a business aspect of that that's really tough. but frankly, it wasn't my job, right? Like I was a content producer. It was my job to create the stuff, and it was somebody else's job to go out and market it and sell it.
Exactly. Or you have an agent on certain things, but getting an agent on books is like harder than getting an agent for television, which I thought was hard, but
Well, and if you have an agent, what they do is they get you the publishing deal. They don't go out and like hawk the thing.
yes.
It's
No.
still you
And then
out
I hear
and
that
like,
a lot of
hi,
publishers,
will you
yes.
please read the book?
Yeah, exactly. It's all on you. And I mean, unless you're famous and you have this huge platform where you have 70,000 people that are just waiting for your next book, it's not that easy. And my book has gotten good reviews. I've already won 2 awards, which was great. But then you go, well, how does that translate to people knowing about my book? You know, it's so hard.
It is. Oh, okay. So instead of asking what the hardest part about it was, I'm going to ask what, if anything, has been your favorite part? Is there a part about the business part that you actually like? Like, for example, for me, like on the business side, I think I liked having more control over the
Mhm.
way something was marketed or sold. Because in Hollywood, again, I would produce something in a way I would have zero control over how to.
Yes.
And so I think there was a bit of power in that of going, well, at least I get to, I mean, I didn't get to pick my covers, but I get to like chime in when the publishing house sent them to me and stuff. I got a little, and when they would send me a press release, I could at least read it and chime in and go, wait, that's wrong.
Right.
Was there a part about the business difference that you like, or is it just all like, oh my gosh, it's still too early, the book only came out in April, I don't know yet?
I think for me, and I don't know if this is really the business part, but it sort of is the other authors. I have found, unlike television, which is very, very competitive and people they kind of eat you alive, authors are so nice and they're so supportive. And I have met so many great friends by doing this, where they're promoting my book when they can, I'm promoting their books when I can. And that's the part of the business I have to say I have loved. I just can't believe how many people are so nice in this business. I mean, it's crazy.
That is a really, because that's true. That's a
Yeah, because in television, it was like, stab you in the back to get the next job or whatever. And it's not like that, at least, I mean, I don't know a lot of male authors, but women authors are so good to each other. They really are. And my publishing company is all female. It's She Writes Publishing, and they're She Writes Press, and they're all female. And the group that we've formed, we Zoom every month and we talk all the time and we're on the phone all the time. Oh, how's this going? And we help each other with marketing and ideas. And that part's been great. Really, really great.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's not going to leap to the top of my list of things that I like about the business. It is. It's the writer friends that I picked up, and the conferences you do together, and the speeches you do together, and you sit on a panel, and you're all suddenly buddies.
Right, exactly. It's so true. It brings people together in a different way, especially women. I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had the same experience with male authors, though. Like we're all like, everybody's just like, what can I do to help you? Because I know when my book comes out, frankly,
yep, that's exactly what it's like.
And a reader is a reader, right?
Yes.
Now, one of the things that was a really big difference for me, and yours has to be maybe more pronounced, because you were a sitcom writer, which means you were going into writers' rooms and you were participating in that real group,
which I love. I love that.
You did.
Yes, I loved it.
Okay, so tell me about your group, like that collaborative experience of creating something versus creating something on your own, like you're doing now. Like that's a huge difference.
Well, I loved going in the room. I loved having people to bounce ideas off of. I loved not feeling so responsible for a story, because, everybody talks about the story and then you go write it and then they change it and you go back and write everything. And I liked that aspect a lot because I never felt alone. There was always somebody to go into. And with writing this book, until I got closer and found a publisher, when I started meeting all these women, I was alone. I mean, I really didn't have anybody to bounce things off of. And I mean, I had my writing group, which was great, and they met once a month, but it wasn't like something where I would constantly call them and say, hey, what about this? What about that? So there were times that I just felt really alone, because it is a very lonely profession. And so that is the thing I really enjoyed. But what you just said about control, that's the thing I love about writing a book. You create the characters, you put the words in their mouth, you create the setting, and you don't have somebody saying, well, you have a budget here, so you can't go to France with these characters or whatever. And that's very freeing, because you can open up the world in a different way than you can do in a sitcom, where they say, well, okay, we have 7 places for sets today, and this is all you can do. Or we spent all the money on this major actor, so you don't have enough money in the budget to do this. You have all the money in the world in your budget to write a book. So that part I really liked.
So you talked about earlier that you're really good at dialogue. And of course, I mean, for people at home who are not regular readers of scripts, if you pick up a movie or a television script, it's dialogue. I mean, that's the primary, what you're reading is dialogue and what you're writing. But then you talked about the fact that you didn't outline your book before you started, which is a very not screenwritery thing to do.
Right.
So what were like the process, like, did you find that there were certain process things that you stole from screenwriting and did apply to your, like for people who are watching who are trying to get better at their craft, did you steal from screenwriting anything that really made the novel writing process better? Like, do you have a dialogue tip? Or do you have a structured tip, something that would help people?
Well, the one thing that I did do when I did get to the outline is I put all of the scenes on cards, and then I laid them all out. And then that way I could say, oh, you know what, this one actually belongs here and this one belongs there, even though I was going in a certain direction. I actually at times completely moved them in different places in the book, because I wanted certain things to start later or certain things to start earlier. Or I got a note. I had 2 writer friends read the first draft, and then they would give me a note and say, you need to move this kind of thing up because we need to see it quicker. So that I really thought helped, was to put it all on cards and lay it all out just chapter by chapter and take a look at it and then move them around. I mean, dialogue comes easy to me, and the harder part is everything else. So I sometimes have to say to myself, this is a book and I know you have a lot of dialogue, but remember, you have to have other things. And in 2018, I went to the Kauai Writers Conference, and I took a workshop from Christina Baker-Klein, Kristen Hanna, and Alice Hoffman. And in this workshop, they were all amazing. Christina Baker-Klein was the best teacher in the world, but Kristen Hanna went through a whole thing on revisions and how she layers the book. So she writes it, and then she might go back and put in some more setting and more description or more dialogue. And she just keeps going over it until it feels like it's a real book. And that really helped me a lot. When I got home from that conference, I started my book over again. I had done the first draft, but I started from the beginning and really looked at the revision process and thought about, okay, now I have to put in what she's seeing, what she's smelling, because I was so good at the dialogue, that was the easy part. So I went through, it's kind of like I wrote an animation show called The Wild Thornberries at one point. And that was really hard for me. And the notes I kept getting is, it's animation, you have to describe it more. Because in a sitcom, you have the director. And so you don't, you might say she walks across the room or whatever, but you have somebody directing it and then blocking all the scenes. In animation, you have to write everything that happens so the animator knows exactly what they're animating. And that was a different process for me. So I learned that there too, how to do that.
Oh, I had no idea that an animation script is that much different.
It is
Wow.
Because you're telling the animators some of the stuff that you want to happen in the scene. And you do that in sitcoms, but not in the same way. It's a little bit different. You describe it in a different way. And that was something I had to learn. And they gave me notes and taught me how to do it there.
What did you learn about yourself writing this book, either as a writer or as a human or as a woman or as a wife, like in whatever way you want to approach that? Because every time you write a book, you change.
You do.
It's like, it's not optional. So how did you change?
I learned that I am a writer, because even though I wrote television and then I stopped, I never considered myself a writer. And even though I wrote all these essays, I never thought I was a writer. once I wrote this book, I thought, oh yeah, I'm a published author. I am a writer. So in that way, my confidence in myself, I think that was helped a lot in that way. And also I learned like I could do it. Like just, I could sit down and do this, something that a lot of people say, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book, and, or I should write a book, and they don't actually write it, but I actually completed it. And, I really, really wanted readers to walk away with feeling like they related to these people, that they could say either they were Maggie or they knew Maggie, or the parents were similar, or they'd gone through this, or the empty nest, any of those things. And a lot of the reviews said the same thing. And they just said it was really relatable to my life. And that made me so happy, because that is what I was trying to get across, is that other women would say, wow, you know what? Two things, actually. One thing is, wow, that could be my life, or that is my life. And somebody understands that. She's writing about this and she understands it. And the other thing is just that no matter how old you are, you can still do something else. You can change, you can go back to your passion. You can do whatever else you want to do. You don't have to say, well, I'm, this age, and that means I'm done. I kept saying, if I didn't write the book, then I'd still be 4 years older. It's like, I could have just said, well, whatever, I'm not going to do that. I'm, at a certain age that I don't need to do it anymore. But I didn't. And I think that's really important for people to know, that, you can go back and find your passion, or you can just find a new passion, and you can keep being, whatever you want to be.
Actually, one other question though, because you brought it up. Have you gotten to be with book clubs yet?
I have done 3 book clubs. I have another one next week. I love book clubs. I love them. I'm actually going to my first one in person next week, but the other 2 were on Zoom. One was with Vanderbilt University with a whole bunch of people there.
My alma mater.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was
That's
with the
really
nursing department at Vanderbilt University.
Oh, great.
And they asked me to do a book club for them, which I did. I guess it's been about a month, I think. And then I did one with a friend of mine who lives in New Jersey, who contacted me and said, our book club's reading your book. And my mom's book club's going to read my book. So I'm going to go there to my mom. So, and then I'm doing one next week. So I love book clubs.
Yeah, I just asked because it seems like such a book club to read to me, and like such a story that would get women talking about where they are in their lives, and how to cope and over wine, and you're drinking and you're talking about all these issues. I just absolutely see it a book club read. But also, I bet you are going to enjoy the book clubs as you go to them, because you are going to hear that over and over again. Oh my gosh, I was Maggie. Oh, I related to that.
Exactly. And I love when people say that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the one I'm doing next week.
Mm-hmm. Yep, in person. We're all going back in person, man.
I know. My book club's going back in person too. So.
Right? We all got to get there somehow.
Yep.
This was delightful. I was very glad to meet you over Zoom. Even though we have things in common, we had never actually met. So this was a lovely excuse to do that.
Yes.
This is fantastic. So I hope everybody at home will read it and enjoy it. But thank you so much for being here, Leslie.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully see each other in person on the road or in LA or somewhere.
That'd be great. Definitely contact us. Yeah.
I will see everybody else next time.
Story time with Stephanie Story time virtually. We've got time and plenty of stories, talking stories in a novel way. Story time with Stephanie Story.